Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This is the second episode in Good Sport Week, where we are doing some episodes linked to the fact that I have a big new podcast series. It is called Good Sport. I hope people are listening. It is out there now. Each episode kind of looks at an interesting question from the world of sports that maybe unlocks something bigger. And then over the course of the series, I think hopefully adds up to this argument, I guess, that sports is a good way to understand the world and ourselves, and is as good of a lens as any, as I say in the show, to understanding some bigger forces in our lives. So, here to help celebrate Good Sport Week, as always, Nicole Hammer of Vanderbilt and Kelly Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
I feel like I should have pom-poms, especially since we're in a stadium.
It's very hard to resist the sports metaphors and the sports cliches.
Go, team, go.
But, you know, it's also shared language, right? Someone was telling me, like,
it is.
Sports and weather are the only two things left, basically, that you can, like, walk into any bar in any place and just start talking to someone about. And chances are you will, you'll find some common ground, or at least just, like, have a civil conversation. Though, as we talked about last episode, sometimes it can get uncivil pretty quick. But look, so this episode, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about stadiums and how stadium deals come together. And we do an episode in Good Sport about stadium deals. And this question that I had kind of, and then we started pulling and tugging on threads, which was basically like, why does it feel like whenever a new stadium gets built in a city, more often than not, like, everyone's pissed off, and like on the one hand, it's really cool to have a new stadium. And like I go to, Barclays Center here in New York, and I go to Citi Field, but I also know that like those were incredibly fraught and contentious. In the episode of Good Sport, we kind of start with this stadium that was built in Miami, for the Marlins, this baseball stadium that, had a big fight around it. And, when you do the math, all told, the taxpayers of Miami are on the hook for like $1 billion over, decades because of all the subsidies and giveaways and tax breaks and so forth that were given to the owner, where, and as we say in the episode, often these owners are billionaires themselves. And like no one seems to be saying like, well, maybe you should just pay for this thing largely on your own. And so there's a lot of hard feelings, and we get into kind of why that is.
I mean, you can begin to understand why people might feel a bit swindled in the case of Miami. $1 billion in a city that, one, is sinking into the ocean, and you could probably use some of that money for infrastructure. Two, like it has like this one little train that runs around and operates as its public transportation system. It could use quite a bit more. There's a lot of segregation and poverty and problems with Miami that are not going to be solved by $1 billion spent on a stadium.
Right.
Yeah. And Jody, I don't know how much you get into this, but in terms of just like access, like once these stadiums are built, like what is the affordability of getting tickets? Because so much of the new stadiums block off like, X amount of seats for box seats and all this stuff. And it's so prohibitive that if you go, you're up in the nosebleeds. And you might as well just watch at the local bar.
No, totally. I mean, and especially like I think you've probably had this too, but I mean, it's like you take a kid and a spouse or two kids and a spouse to a stadium now, and it's like a few $100, like minimum, all in.
Yeah.
Right.
And don't eat.
And so, yes, I mean, I think prices are a big part of it, but I think a place where that gets negotiated is often, and it is sort of an evolution in the conversation around stadiums, is that yes, okay, there are going to be subsidies for the development of them, but what else can come along with that development? And there have been some places in the U.S. where, they've done community development around the stadium, right? And they've thought about, okay, we're not just going to build this thing, but what does it mean for local businesses? But often what shakes out is like, those are promises, right? And, we promised that we were going to build a new stadium here. And then down the street, we were also going to build a new ball field for the local high school. And, lo and behold, 10 years later, the stadium got built and the ticket prices are $99 at minimum. And that ball field for the local public school is, it's just taking us a little longer to get around to that one, And so that is often the case. And so that, I think, leads to hard feelings because it's not just oh, you steamrolled, so to speak, but also there's broken promises, right, as part of this. And, you know, what I came to realize kind of in making this is that really it's just one of the experts we talked to in the show is like, I sort of tell him, like, what do you make of the sort of frustration that people feel that these deals seem to be negotiated by just a few powerful people who don't seem to hear the voice of the community and don't seem to have their priorities in order? And his reaction was just like, well, I think, what does he say? He says, welcome to democracy. And it's like, right. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I mean, he was...
Is it though?
I mean, but it is, right? And I mean, I feel like that's what I came to realize is like a stadium is just a product of a democratic system, and it is a development deal, and we should think of it. I mean, to your point earlier about kind of like, where are our priorities, you know? And so,
but democratic or capitalist? Because to me,
well, what system are we living in, right? Our democracy is refracted through that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. I mean, but you know, that's that. If people want to feel less frustrated, they need to realize that you have to apply the same pressures on this system that hopefully you do to your schools and your transportation, and that there are trade-offs. And this, to some extent, it is a zero-sum game, that the money spent on the stadium is money that could have gone to, no matter what the billionaire owner tells you, you know, that money could have gone to some other priority or could be tacked on to some other priority. And so it's just a few people are going to get into the room and make some powerful decisions, but who do they feel the pressure, and where do they feel the pressure from? And then ultimately that's, you know, it's an unsatisfying answer. That ultimately that is the sort of dynamic at play.
And how walled off are they from actually feeling the pressure that's applied? And I think that, you know, echoing Kelly, like one of the challenges of our current democratic capitalist system is that it does seem like this replicates the idea of smoke-filled rooms and big money determining policy. And there are certainly reforms that can be put in place. And I think not just on the federal level, but on the local level. And I think that there has been pushback in many localities trying to prevent these kinds of what many people see as boondoggles happening in their cities. But it can feel like an uphill battle where money speaks louder than votes.
Yeah. So we'll play a clip from the show where, you know, we meet one of these people who's in one of these smoke-filled rooms, and he's this real character, and he kind of makes no bones about where he feels the pressure and so forth. And so he's just, you know, very fascinating character. I think it'll be fun to listen to. I will also say, though, that, you know, kind of there's something in this episode of Good Sport. There's kind of like the thing that I feel like I learned the most over the course of making this, which is the episode ends up talking about Barcelona in 1992. And when you go to Barcelona and you talk to people in Barcelona, they continually say hosting the Olympics in 1992 was actually sort of revolutionary for our city. And it really transformed the city for better. And, you know, we tend to think of Olympics as the boondoggles of boondoggles, right? And what happened in Barcelona, as we were saying, is that there was a democratic process in place that linked the development that was being done around the Olympics to the larger priorities to develop the city. At some basic level, the priorities were there, and a place like Barcelona made the Olympics and made sports development work for them as opposed to the other way around. So that's included in the episode, and you can go listen and talk to someone in Barcelona and so forth. But we'll play you a clip here that starts with this character who negotiated the deal in Miami to give you a taste of kind of what those smoke-filled rooms are like, and then you can hopefully go listen to the rest of the episode of Good Sport after that. Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you.
Thanks, Jody.
And Kelly Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
You're used to hearing my voice on the world, bringing you interviews from around the globe.
And you hear me reporting environment and climate news. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. We're now with you hosting The World Together. More global journalism with a fresh new sound.
Listen to The World on your local public radio station and wherever you find your podcasts.
When I go back and visit some place I used to live, like all of us, I notice what's new, I notice what's not. There's often new apartment buildings, but maybe I'll also notice the same park playground I played on when I was a kid, the chain on the swing a little rustier. or the same housing development that looks 10 years older, 10 years more run down. And often, in many cities when I'm visiting, I'm driving around and yep, there it is, a brand new stadium. All of these, the school playground, the housing development, the stadium, they're choices, decisions, ones our elected officials made, deals they cut in some room somewhere. I think a lot of the frustration there is that it comes down to, as these deals often come down to, a 5-person commission and the one swing vote on that commission. And it's really about how do we get that person to vote for this deal? And it feels like the public is cut out of this.
Yeah, well, welcome to America. It's not surprising to see political practices reproduced throughout the economy, throughout the society. It's not surprising to see the class structure reproduced by these deals. It's not surprising to see deals where wealthy people become wealthier. It happens everywhere.
That's why I wanted to talk to David Sampson, the guy who was the agent for the rich Miami owner, the one brokering the deal that would make that owner even richer. The guy who says ethics are never a consideration when you negotiate a stadium. Who the heck is this guy?
My name is David Sampson, and I am 54 years old. I started my career as just a tiny little boy in elementary school. No, that's not true. I was not Doogie Howser. I was a baby. I had diapers on.
You should know, and you can probably tell already, David tends to exaggerate. But I don't think anyone who is part of these deals is going to give you like a 100% unbiased account. And David was in those rooms. So I do think he's worth listening to.
At the end of the day, when it was down to the are we in or are we out, it was me and just 2 other people on the other side.
So we're talking about literally 3 men in a room.
It's 3 men and a baby. That's pretty much what it was.
There were logical reasons why the Marlins would benefit from a new stadium. They were sharing the old stadium with the football team, the Dolphins, and it really did make sense to have a new stadium where they could close the roof during rain, which the previous stadium didn't have. Otherwise, they'd have to keep canceling and rescheduling home games. But the most useful tool in a negotiation like this isn't logic. It's emotion.
Anytime you are talking to someone, you are negotiating with that person. You are trying to convey something to them. You're trying to get them to understand what you want or to do what you want or to do what they think they want, but it's really what you want. But when someone is negotiating who is emotional, you've already won. It's over.
And people get emotional about sports stadiums. There's a sense of civic pride with your local sports team and a sense of loss if they leave. Just ask old-timers in Baltimore who still remember when the Colts skipped town in the dead of night, or basketball fans in Seattle who lost their beloved franchise to Oklahoma City.
It's the reason why these deals keep happening, because the politicians do not want to be responsible when a team leaves a city. They don't want to be responsible for anything negative associated with that professional sports team. And there's that emotional pull that you can tug on and you win every deal.
And so you're saying that the owners and the people negotiating on their behalf, they know that. They know they have that leverage.
100%, every time.
The very thing that makes sports special, the emotions, the pride, it's what David exploited in his negotiation. He tugged on that by making it seem like Miami really could lose the Marlins.
I hate to not give myself credit because it's sort of cool what I did. But the reason anyone could have done it is that I knew and everyone knew that there was no way that Miami was going to let the Marlins leave Miami.
That threat or negotiating tactic will leave. I'm always curious kind of how real that threat is. Sometimes it feels to me like a threat that you know is just going to be a useful threat, but it's not really a possibility.
Well, again, go back to your conversations that I call negotiations. How often do you say something where you say to yourself, there's no way I'm going to allow that to happen, but I'm going to say it. And I'm going to say it hoping that the other person believes what I'm saying and will act accordingly.
David wouldn't call it a bluff, but I will. And to make it believable, he flew to San Antonio. He met with city officials there. Did they want the Marlins? Were they willing to build them a shiny new stadium? His performance made the threat seem real. And people in Miami noticed. They started to think, wow, we could really lose the Marlins.
franchises use other cities as leverage, period. And the only people who don't realize it are the people who run the cities.
And it worked, because a politician is probably not going to lose their job over a few schools closing, but lose the home team, your career is over. And that means when it comes to these negotiations, team owners can ask the city for a lot of help. The magic number for a stadium deal is as much as team owners dare ask for. A billionaire sports team owner will just turn to a city and ask for help when, I don't know, maybe they could just pay for the stadium their own damn selves. Or maybe I should put it this way. Billionaire owners hold so much power in these negotiations that their ask for the stadium, the tax breaks, the land lease, it comes to be seen as normal, expected even. But if you just take a step back, at least from my point of view, and from a lot of Miamians' point of view, a deal like this is insane. $350 million in taxpayer money, eventually ballooning to $2 billion? In David's point of view, there's no taking a step back. Up close and in the room, he saw this as a middle-of-the-road stadium deal. He maybe thinks he could have asked for more.
The reputation is that the stadium deal in Miami was very one-sided, but the irony is when that deal was cut and approved, there were many owners angry with us because they thought the deal was far too government-friendly and not team-friendly enough.
Right, but measuring the response of fellow owners isn't the only way to gauge response to a deal.
It's the only way that I care to gauge it, right? Because those are the people I'm competing with. You bring up the best point. When I run a baseball team, I'm competing with the 29 other teams and what they're willing to pay a player. I don't care about fan bases. I don't care about the media. I don't care about fans, right? That's not my job. I'm not competing with the fan base in St. Louis. I'm competing with the owners in St. Louis and the president of the St. Louis Cardinals. I need to make smarter signings, make better deals so I have a competitive advantage.
There's no thought of the public in that room when you get down to it?
The answer is that fans and Miamians, the subject never came up.
That's a taste of the new show, Good Sport. Subscribe and follow wherever you listen to podcasts.